Good morning and welcome to worship with West Bloomfield United Methodist Church. Wherever you are and however you have been celebrating your Christmas holiday, we're so glad that you've chosen to join us this morning for worship. We hope you had a wonderful Christmas. We know that it was different this year in many, many ways, but hope that you were still able to celebrate the birth of Christ and the time together to share gifts with one another and offer your thanks for the year. As we gather in worship this morning, we just invite you to enjoy this day. We have a more relaxed service today as we celebrate Christmas, as we give thanks for the gifts God has given, and as we continue to look forward to celebrating the new year. As we gather this morning, know that we will be a little quiet around the church, as it is in a lot of places for the coming week, but we are also getting ready for new Bible studies and other opportunities for growth and for service in the church in the new year, and we hope that you'll check out things that are going on both on our email list and through our website to get connected to ministries and to people so that we can continue to do the work of Jesus Christ in the world. We invite you to settle in with a cup of coffee or hot chocolate and enjoy this time of worship with us. Today, I want to tell you a story about a boy named Tony. You see, Tony was one of the nicest boys that anybody ever knew. He was one of the kindest boys around. That is, at school, he shared his lunch, he shared his candy, he shared his cupcakes with all his friends. Tony was also the largest boy in class. He was taller than any other boy. He was also heavier than any other boy. He had bright red hair, bright orange red hair, and he had these red freckles on his cheeks. He had the best smile in the whole class. His smile beamed just from ear to ear. He was such a happy and smiling person that everyone enjoyed being around him, that all the kids loved to play with him. At school recess, he'd play with both the boys and the girls. Even though he was so big, he was not a bully. In fact, Tony wasn't mean at all, not one bit. He was as good-natured a kid as you could find. But like a lot of kids, Tony had a problem. You see, Tony didn't like the academic side of school too well. He struggled. He couldn't read very well, and worse yet, Tony had a problem where he couldn't remember things very well. And so every time the teacher would say something, he'd just have a hard time remembering it. It was hard for him to remember, and so hard, in fact, that he had to repeat the first grade. But then, of course, he was another year older than all of the other kids and that much bigger than all of them. He was the biggest boy in his class, but also the nicest boy. And at Christmas time, it was that time of year when all the churches were going to have their pageants, and Tony had always wanted to have a speaking part in his Christmas pageant, but he could never really remember his speaking part very well, so he always ended up being one of the shepherds or animals that didn't have anything to say. He always wore sheep ears or carried a shepherd's staff or something like that. This particular year, however, Tony's Sunday school teacher approached him and said, "Tony, this year, I was wondering, would you like to be the innkeeper?" And Tony said, "Me? You want me to be the innkeeper?" And the teacher said, "Yes. You only have 2 lines that you'll need to remember. all you have to remember is when Joseph comes to the door with Mary and comes to the inn and asks if there's room, all you have to say is, there is no room in the inn. You'll have to sleep in the barn. Can you remember that, Tony? Tony repeated to the teacher what she just said. There is no room for you in the inn. You'll have to sleep in the barn. Tony went back to his desk and slowly said his lines to himself over and over again. There is no room for you in the inn. You'll have to sleep in the barn. And then he would practice a little faster and say, there is no room for you in the inn. You'll have to sleep in the barn. And then he said them as fast as he could, and he said, there is no room for you in the barn. You'll have to sleep in the barn. Oh yes, he could learn those lines. So after school, Tony jumped on his bicycle. He rode home as fast as he could. He burst in the kitchen and he shouted at his mother, there is no room for you in the inn. You'll have to sleep in the barn. His mother sensed what was going on, and she was very happy for Tony. She could see, was so proud of himself. This week quickly passed. The night for the Christmas pageant arrived. The church was jammed full, packed in that night. Everybody squished together, just like we remember our sanctuary being for those special times. It came that time for Tony to sit out on the stage, and as he did so, he looked at all those faces out in the congregation. It was like a sea of faces that were all watching him up there in the front. He was mesmerized by all of those people sitting there watching him. Kind of scary to see all of them watching. And there he was, the innkeeper. Tony started to get a little nervous and started being afraid about saying his lines. And then the story of Mary and Joseph started to unfold in the Christmas drama. As Tony saw Mary and Joseph coming down the central aisle of the sanctuary on their way to Bethlehem, Tony started to have these big feelings for Mary and for Joseph. His heart got even bigger as he saw them walk down the aisle, and Tony thought to himself, Mary, she looks so tired. She's been riding on that donkey all day long. Joseph also looks tired. And his heart started to feel badly for Mary and Joseph as they came down that dusty road to the inn. How could he tell the pregnant Mary there was no space for her? Or that her husband Joseph couldn't take care of her there? How could he say something so unkind, so uncaring? And Mary and Joseph came closer and closer to his inn, and as they came closer and closer, Tony thought, oh no, what's my part? I can't remember what I'm supposed to say. So Joseph arrives at the front door of his inn and knocks and says, innkeeper, do you have room for us in your inn? My wife Mary is going to have a baby real soon, like tonight. Do you have room for us in your inn? And Tony was just overwhelmed by this moment, by his feelings. He said, there's no room for you in the inn. You have to sleep in the barn. But you can have my room tonight if you want. Everybody laughed. Everybody laughed. And Tony felt so embarrassed. He felt that everybody was laughing at him. He felt so badly that his teacher would be disappointed in him, that he'd missed his lines. Tony knew in his heart that everybody was staring at him and laughing. And during the rest of the Christmas pageant, his eyes kept looking down on the floor, his head hung low. And after the play was over and the congregation had sung Silent Night, his Sunday school teacher came up to him and said, Tony, you were the best player in the whole pageant. You know why? Because you understood the meaning of Christmas more than anyone else here tonight. You were magnificent, Tony. Tony said, really? And his teacher said, really? Suddenly, all the kids from the class were crowding around him and patting him on the back, saying, you were great. You did a really good job tonight, Tony. You got it right. That was awesome. And after hearing all of his friends say such nice things, Tony started feeling proud of himself again. It came time that night when Tony needed to go to bed. His mother kissed him goodnight and told him how proud she was of him. She closed his door, and as it was dark in Tony's room, except for the light streaming through the curtains, it was time for Tony to say his goodnight prayers. And his prayer that night was simple. He said, "Jesus, I want you to stay here in my room tonight and every night for the rest of my life." May it be so for you and for me as well. Amen. We thank you for taking time to spend in worship with us today. We hope that this service was a blessing and an encouragement to you, and that it's given you something to walk through this next week with, a reason to give thanks, a reason to give hope, a reason to share the love of God. We hope that you'll join us on Zoom now for our time of prayers and fellowship together. If you need help finding your way to connect with us on Zoom, please email me at pastor@westbloomfieldumc.org. Merry Christmas and God bless.